everyone, it's Shell from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is part of the June card hop-in event for the Handmade Happiness Facebook group. I'm going to be creating this card using the Joseph's Coat technique. We're going to start off with a piece of Canson XL watercolor paper, and it's cut to 4 by 5 1/4. We're going to use a couple colors of Distressed Oxide, some Versamark ink, some Stupendous clear embossing powder, and a stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. So to start off, we're going to create the background. I'm going to use Kitsch Flamingo and put it into a couple different areas. I'm going to do the same thing with the Salvage Patina and Seedless Preserves. I'm using watercolor paper because I like how smooth the Distress Oxides go on, and I just think it gives a really, really nice result. And if you haven't tried Distress Oxides on watercolor cardstock or watercolor paper, I'd highly recommend trying it. It blends so easily, and the color kind of just glides right across the watercolor paper. It's so easy to use. So you can see I'm just putting on the second color, which is Salvage Patina, and then I'll go in and fill in the gaps with some Seedless Preserves after I go back over some of the areas with the Kitsch Flamingo, kind of just going back and forth and blending between all of the colors. So putting down that Seedless Preserves, which when they overlap, they create another color. So I only used 4 colors here, but you can kind of get, I think we got about 5 different colors with the overlap. So once that was done, I put it to the side to dry for a couple minutes, and then I actually hit it with my heat gun a couple different times. And I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to tell if the ink is dry or not. Distress Oxide ink stays wet longer, so I definitely did need to either leave it overnight or hit it with my heat tool, but I used my heat tool. So I'm using the light kaolin clay to go over top of this. This is what's inside of the anti-static powder bags and things like that. Just using my makeup brush, dipping it into the container that I have, and covering the area generously. And now I'm going to take a dark embossing powder. I believe this is black by Martha Stewart. You can use any color. I just didn't want to use the clear because I thought it would be hard to tell. And I'm going to dump the powder on top of it. If it sticks to the area like it does there, that means the ink is still wet in that area. So I went back, heat set it again, added the anti-static clay, and then once that was all set, I am now going to take a sponge dauber. This is a Tim Holtz one with the Versamark ink, and I'm going to go over all the areas of this butterfly stencil. So I apologize for my head getting in the way. I just wanted to see if it was leaving a residue behind, because you can see with Versamark ink, you can see the image once you've lifted up the stencil. So I'm going to do this and cover the whole entire thing, and then I'm actually going to go over top of it, take the ink pad and drag it over. So while you're watching me do this, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Handmade Happiness. It's a Facebook group where we all are card makers, paper crafters, and we love to try new challenges. Every month, Jennifer Schoolcraft comes up with a technique and a theme. So this month was Black Magic or Joseph's Coat techniques, and the theme was butterflies. So I knew I had this stencil lying around, and I've been trying to use some of my older products as well. I've used this a couple times on cards, and I know the girls have used this one, and I thought it would just be perfect. I thought most people were probably going to do stamps when it came to this technique, and I thought, why not use a stencil? Because you can use stencils with Versamark, and I just wanted to show that technique and try something a little bit different. This is the first time I've ever done the Joseph's Coat technique that I knew it to be this name. We've done like ink trapping, things like that before, but I never really knew that it had a name. So now that I know it had a name, I've done this technique, but it's been a really, really long time. So there you see, I'm going over the whole entire image with the Versamark pad just to make sure that I got all of the areas, and I'm going to lift it up, put the stencil to the side. You don't have to clean this right away. Versamark is a wet, sticky ink that stays sticky for a long time, so I cleaned it up after I was all done. It's not like embossing paste where you have to clean it right away. So now I am using some really old Stampendous clear embossing powder. This is probably the same age as my Martha Stewart stuff, so it's probably about 10 years old. I'm just generously coating the top, and then I'm going to pour it down to the bottom. I have a card base that I'm pouring it into that I will pour the embossing powder back into the container for. So I'm just going back in and adding some embossing powder on some of the areas that may not have that may not have had embossing powder on it. Now I'm taking my Wagner heat tool on level 2. When I was drying it, I did it on level 1, but when I heat emboss it, I heat it on level 2, and you can see that it turns it a glossy clear. So before it kind of looked a little milky and it wasn't shiny. Now it's very shiny, so you can definitely see the image here once it's heat embossed. I made sure everything was heat embossed, and then I put it to the side for a little while to cool down, because you don't want to go right in with the ink over top of it if the embossing powder isn't cooled. So you give it like a minute or two to cool down. I think I gave it like 5 or 6 minutes, and then just because I was looking for some things. Now we're going to go over the top of this with some chipped sapphire distress oxide. And like I said, this blends super easily over top of this, the watercolor cardstock. So I would highly recommend when you're doing this technique to try the watercolor cardstock. So once I cover the entire area, I am going to take a dry paper towel and just rub over top of the embossed areas just to take that excess chipped sapphire off. So you can see that it brings out those colors. It puts the chipped sapphire to the background and kind of brings out those colors of the butterflies. If you had more solid of images, you would have more of that background color, the color that we did first. And if you have skinnier line images, you're going to see more of the color that you put on last. So I am going to, there you go, I'm taking a paper towel. This is a really old one that I've used for a while, but it's dry. And then I'm just going over the embossing, and you can see I keep showing you guys that the ink is coming off of it. So you just want to wipe it off because it could get on your hands if you go to touch the card after that, because the ink will be sitting on top of the embossing powder and it resists it. I'm using my Honeybee Bee Creative glue to put glue all over the back of the card and glue it down to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch black card base. And I will put a sentiment on it later when I decide what this is going for, but that's the card for today. I hope that you learned a new technique and that you hop along with us. Make sure that you check out the more information section below for who is next in the hop, and I'll also have the whole entire hop lineup. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll see you again real soon for another video. Bye!